The winter storm hit New York with a vengeance Amara hadn't seen in years. She pressed her gloved hand against the frost-covered window of her Brooklyn brownstone, watching the freezing rain turn to snow in the amber glow of street lamps. The wind screamed between buildings like something alive and angry, making the old glass panes shudder in their frames. She pulled her vintage wool coat tighter, though it did little against the cold seeping through the building's ancient bones. The radiator in the corner hissed and sputtered, barely warm despite her turning it up as high as it would go. Another thing the landlord wouldn't fix. Another expense she couldn't afford while the gallery kept postponing her overdue raise. Amara was about to draw the curtains and surrender to the evening when she saw him. A figure stumbled against the wrought iron gate just outside her building, barely visible through the curtain of white. He collapsed onto the icy steps, his dark suit incongruous against the snow. Even from 3 stories up, she could see the wet gleams spreading across his white shirt.
Blood.
Amara's breath caught. Every instinct screamed danger. This was Brooklyn at midnight. Strange men bleeding on your doorstep meant trouble, the kind that followed you home and never left. She should call 911. Let the professionals handle it. Go back to her tea and her art books and pretend she'd seen nothing. But as she watched him try and fail to push himself up, something in her chest twisted. He was dying out there. Her hand was reaching for her keys before she made the conscious decision. The cold slammed into Amara the moment she pushed through the building's front door, stealing her breath. The wind cut through her coat like knives, and the freezing rain stung her face. But she pushed forward, her boots sliding on ice-slicked steps. "Hey, can you hear me?" The man didn't respond. Up close, she could see he was Asian, Japanese, she thought, based on the elegant cut of his features. His hair, styled with obvious care, was now matted with a mixture of ice and blood. His suit was expensive, very expensive, the kind she'd seen on collectors at gallery openings. But it was torn at the shoulder, and dark stains spread across the white shirt beneath. His face was marble pale, lips edging toward blue. "Sir, you need to get inside." She grabbed his arm, startled by the solid muscle beneath the fabric. Whoever he wasn't soft. "Come on, please. You'll freeze to death out here." His eyes fluttered open, dark, intense, burning with something fierce even as consciousness slipped away. For a moment, he stared at her like she was speaking a language he'd forgotten. Then his weight shifted and she realized he was trying to help, trying to stand. "That's it. I've got you." Amara wrapped his arm around her shoulders, grunting under his weight. He was tall, at least 6 feet, and solid in a way that spoke of discipline, of training. Every step toward her building's entrance felt like miles. Her muscles screamed. Her boots slipped. But she kept going. The warmth of the hallway was a blessing. She half-dragged, half-carried him up 2 flights of stairs to her apartment, her curator's hands, trained for delicate work with fragile artifacts, now supporting a man who felt anything but fragile. By the time she got her door open and maneuvered him inside, sweat was freezing on her skin despite the cold. Amara lowered him onto her vintage velvet couch, the one beautiful thing she'd salvaged from her grandmother's estate. Her hands shook as she peeled off his frozen suit jacket. The shirt underneath was ruined. White silk, now torn and soaked crimson. Her fingers found the source immediately, a deep puncture wound across his ribs. And another near his shoulder. Stab wounds. Multiple stab wounds. Oh, God. Her art history training kicked in, the same steady hands that restored delicate paintings, the same attention to detail that spotted forgeries. She rushed to her bathroom, grabbed her first aid kit and clean towels. When she returned, his eyes were open again, watching her with an intensity that made the air feel thin. "You're hurt," she said, kneeling beside the couch, forcing her voice steady. "I need to clean these wounds. It's going to hurt."
He didn't respond.
Just continued staring at her with those dark, unreadable eyes. His jaw was sharp, his features striking even pale and injured. There was something about the way he held himself. Even bleeding on her couch, he seemed to command the space, making her apartment feel suddenly very small. Amara pressed a clean towel against his wound. He didn't even flinch. Most men would have at least hissed in pain. But this one just kept watching her, his gaze tracking every movement of her hands with predatory focus. "What happened to you?" she asked softly, cleaning around the gash.
Who did this?
"You should not have brought me here." His voice was deep, accented, and filled with something that sounded like genuine regret. "You would have been safer leaving me to freeze." Amara's hands stilled. She looked up at him. Really looked at him. The expensive suit even torn. The callous knuckles that spoke of violence, not boardrooms. The way he assessed her apartment with tactical awareness, noting exits, windows, sight lines. And there, just visible where his torn shirt had shifted, the edge of an intricate tattoo. She reached out carefully, pulling the fabric aside. Her breath caught. A dragon. Elaborately detailed, scales rendered in traditional Irizumi style, coiling across his ribs and chest. She could see cherry blossoms blooming along his collarbone, the tail of a koi fish disappearing beneath the waistband of his pants. These weren't trendy tattoos. These were Yakuza. "Who are you?" she whispered. Before he could answer, her phone buzzed. A text from her gallery director. "Need you to come in early tomorrow. Major donor visiting." Wear something impressive. The ordinary intrusion of her normal life felt surreal. She was kneeling on her floor, treating a Yakuza member's stab wounds at 1 a.m. This wasn't her life. This was insane. "I should leave." The stranger tried to sit up. Amara pushed him back down with surprising force. "In this storm? With those wounds? You wouldn't make it to the subway." She met his eyes, refusing to look away. "Whatever trouble you're in, it'll still be there in the morning. Right now, you need rest." Their eyes locked. His were calculating, measuring her in a way that made her spine straighten. She could feel him assessing. Was she a threat? An opportunity? A weakness to exploit? She refused to show the fear fluttering in her chest. Finally, he nodded. A subtle dip of his head that somehow felt like a concession. "What is your name?" he asked.
Amara.
"Amara Bennett." "Amara." He repeated it slowly, like he was memorizing every syllable, cataloging it somewhere important. "I am Kaito Tanaka." "Well, Mr. Tanaka." She grabbed a blanket from her closet, vintage wool, soft from years of use. "You're staying on this couch tonight. I'll check your wounds in a few hours." She draped the blanket over him, careful not to disturb his injuries. "Do you need anything else? Water? Food? Why are you doing this?" His question stopped her mid-motion. "You do not know me. I could be dangerous." Amara looked at him, then at the art books stacked on her coffee table, the charcoal sketches pinned to her walls, the life she'd built from nothing despite everyone who said she couldn't. She thought about all the times people had looked at her, a black woman in a white-dominated art world, and seen only what they expected to see. Made assumptions. Crossed her off the list before she'd even spoken. "My grandmother always said, 'Baby girl, we're judged by what we do when nobody's watching and nothing's owed.'" She met his eyes. "You couldn't even stand on your own out there. So I guess we'll find out in the morning whether my grandmother was right, or if I'm the biggest fool in Brooklyn." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. She was brave. "As are you." A pause. "Or foolish." "Jury's still out," Amara said, moving toward the kitchen. "Now, let me get you some water before you bleed through my grandmother's couch." As she filled a glass at the sink, she could feel his eyes on her back. The apartment was too quiet, too small, too intimate with this dangerous stranger bleeding on her furniture. But outside, the storm raged on. And somewhere in the city, someone was looking for him. She just didn't know yet that by morning, her small act of compassion would change everything. That the man on her couch wasn't just any Yakuza member, but the heir to one of Japan's most powerful crime families. That his enemies would soon come looking. And that she, Amara Bennett, struggling art curator from Brooklyn, had just stepped into a world of beauty and violence she couldn't begin to imagine. The winter storm hit New York with a vengeance Amara hadn't seen in years. She pressed her gloved hand against the frost-covered window of her Brooklyn brownstone, watching the freezing rain turn to snow in the amber glow of street lamps. The wind screamed between buildings like something alive and angry, making the old glass panes shudder in their frames. She pulled her vintage wool coat tighter, though it did little against the cold seeping through the building's ancient bones. The radiator in the corner hissed and sputtered, barely warm despite her turning it up as high as it would go. Another thing the landlord wouldn't fix. Another expense she couldn't afford while the gallery kept postponing her overdue raise. Amara was about to draw the curtains and surrender to the evening when she saw him. A figure stumbled against the wrought iron gate just outside her building, barely visible through the curtain of white. He collapsed onto the icy steps, his dark suit incongruous against the snow. Even from 3 stories up, she could see the wet gleams spreading across his white shirt.
Blood.
Every instinct screamed danger. This was Brooklyn at midnight. Strange men bleeding on your doorstep meant trouble, the kind that followed you home and never left. She should call 911. Let the professionals handle it. Go back to her tea and her art books and pretend she'd seen nothing. But as she watched him try and fail to push himself up, something in her chest twisted. My grandmother always said, "Baby girl, we're judged by what we do when nobody's watching and nothing's owed." This man was dying. That's all that mattered. Her hand was reaching for her keys before she made the conscious decision. The cold slammed into her the moment she pushed through the building's front door, stealing her breath. The wind cut through her coat like knives, and the freezing rain stung her face. But she pushed forward, her boots sliding on ice-slicked steps. "Hey, can you hear me?" The man didn't respond. Up close, she could see he was Asian, Japanese, she thought, based on the elegant cut of his features. His hair, styled with obvious care, was now matted with ice and blood. His suit was expensive, the kind she'd seen on collectors at gallery openings. But it was torn at the shoulder, dark stains spreading across the white shirt beneath. His face was marble pale, lips edging toward blue. "Sir, you need to get inside." She grabbed his arm, startled by the solid muscle beneath the fabric. "Come on, please. You'll freeze to death out here." His eyes fluttered open, dark, intense, burning with something fierce even as consciousness slipped away. For a moment, he stared at her like she was speaking a language he'd forgotten. Then his weight shifted, and she realized he was trying to help, trying to stand. Amara wrapped his arm around her shoulders, grunting under his weight. He was tall and solid in a way that spoke of discipline of training. Every step toward her building's entrance felt like miles. Her muscles screamed. Her boots slipped. But she kept going. By the time she got him up 2 flights of stairs and onto her vintage velvet couch, sweat was freezing on her skin. Her hands shook as she peeled off his frozen suit jacket. The shirt underneath was ruined, white silk, torn and soaked crimson. Her fingers found the wounds immediately. Multiple stab wounds. Deep. Deliberate. Her art restoration training kicked in. The same steady hands that repaired delicate paintings, the same attention to detail that spotted forgeries. She grabbed her first aid kit and clean towels, forcing herself to breathe, to focus. When she returned, his eyes were open again, watching her with an intensity that made the air feel thin. "You're hurt," she said, kneeling beside the couch. "I need to clean these wounds." He didn't respond, just stared at her with those dark, unreadable eyes, his jaw sharp, his features striking even pale and injured. There was something about him, even bleeding on her couch, he commanded the space. Amara pressed a towel against his wound. He didn't even flinch. She worked carefully, the way she'd been trained to handle fragile artifacts, precise, methodical, present. As she cleaned the blood away, she saw them. Intricate tattoos covering his torso. A dragon coiled across his chest, scales rendered in traditional Irizumi style. Cherry blossoms bloomed along his ribs. The tail of a koi fish disappeared beneath his waistband. Her breath caught. These weren't trendy tattoos. These were Yakuza.
Darigakore Ushita.
The words slipped from his lips in Japanese, rough and pained. I don't understand, she said softly. His eyes focused on her face, seeming to truly see her for the first time. When he spoke again, his English was perfect, barely accented. You should not have saved me. His voice was deep, filled with something that sounded like genuine regret. You would have been safer leaving me to freeze. Well, I didn't. She continued cleaning his wounds, her hands steadier than she felt. So, we'll both have to live with that decision. Who are you?
Amara.
Amara Bennett. She met his eyes. And you are? Kaito Tanaka. He watched her hands work. You are trained. Medical? Art restoration. She pressed gauze against the deepest wound. Steady hands. Attention to detail. Same principles apply. Something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe. Or recognition. You are cultured. I'm a curator. At a gallery in Manhattan. She began wrapping bandages with practiced precision. Though I'm probably going to get fired for missing work tomorrow. Do not miss work for me. You have 3 stab wounds and possible hypothermia. You're not exactly in a position to give orders, Mr. Tanaka. That ghost of a smile again. You are either very brave or very foolish, Amara Bennett. Everyone keeps saying that. She secured the last bandage. The jury's still out. She made him drink water, gave him pain medication, covered him with her grandmother's wool blanket. He watched her move through her apartment, taking in the art books stacked on every surface, the charcoal sketches pinned to the walls, the thrift store furniture arranged with obvious care. His gaze lingered on a framed print of Hokusai's Great Wave. You appreciate Japanese art, he observed. I appreciate all art. She settled into the armchair across from him, too wired to sleep. That's why I'm broke and undervalued at a job that treats me like I'm disposable. Then why stay? Because I love it. Because I'm good at it. Because I'm not going to let them make me small just because they're uncomfortable with how bright I could shine. The words came out fiercer than she'd intended.
Sadi.
Long day. Do not apologize for knowing your worth. His eyes were growing heavy, exhaustion finally winning. It is rare. Precious. The night stretched long. Amara kept watch, checking his bandages, his temperature, his breathing. She should have been terrified. Should have called the police. But something about him, the way he'd looked at her art, spoken about worth, carried himself with dignity even in pain, kept her there. When dawn finally broke, gray and cold, she called the gallery for the first time in 3 years of employment.
I'm sick.
I can't come in. Her director's irritation crackled through the phone. Amara, we have the Rothstein meeting today. Marcus will have to cover.
I'm sorry.
She watched Kaito sleep, his face peaceful in a way she suspected was rare. It can't be helped. She ended the call and looked around her apartment. The art books, the sketches, the life she'd built alone in a city that tried daily to convince her she didn't belong. And now this. A dangerous stranger on her couch, Yakuza tattoos hidden beneath bandages, enemies she couldn't imagine hunting him through the frozen city. She should have been afraid. But all she felt was awake. Amara woke to the sound of movement, controlled, deliberate, wrong. Her eyes snapped open to find Kaito standing by her window, one hand pressed against his bandaged ribs, the other testing the lock with practiced efficiency. Dawn light caught the edge of his profile, sharp and alert despite the blood loss, despite everything. What are you doing? She sat up from where she dozed in the armchair, her neck stiff. He turned, and the transformation was complete. Gone was the half-conscious man from last night. His eyes were clear now, dark and assessing, tracking every detail of her apartment with predatory awareness. Exit routes. Sight lines. Weapons within reach, her kitchen knives, a heavy bookend, the wrought iron curtain rod. Leaving. His voice was steady, controlled. Before I bring more danger to your door. You're bleeding through your bandages. I have survived worse. You know what you are. She stood, crossing her arms. Not a question.
His jaw tightened.
The tattoos made it obvious. Yes. She moved between him and the door. Which is why you're being an idiot. You'll be dead before you reach the subway. That is my concern, not yours. You made it my concern when you collapsed on my doorstep. She held his gaze, refusing to look away from the intensity there. Sit down before you tear your stitches and bleed all over my grandmother's rug. Something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe, at being ordered around. But he was also intelligent enough to recognize the logic. He moved back to the couch with careful precision, each step measured to minimize pain. As he passed her bookshelf, his attention snagged. He stopped. Where did you get this? He reached for a slim volume, his fingers hovering just above the spine with reverence. Amara looked. The Hokusai catalog, a rare exhibition book from a Tokyo museum, text in Japanese, published in limited numbers. She'd found it at an estate sale 3 years ago, paid more than she could afford because she couldn't bear to leave it behind. Estate sale. The woman's husband had been a collector. She watched him carefully extract the book, cradling it like something precious. You can read it? I am Japanese. A slight smile. And this is Hokusai. The Hokusai retrospective from 2019. Only 500 copies printed. He opened it with practiced care, and she saw his hands were steady despite his injuries. You know his work. Of course. The Great Wave, Red Fuji. Everyone knows Hokusai. But do you know why his work endures? He turned a page, and his whole demeanor had shifted. The dangerous Yakuza enforcer had receded, replaced by something else, someone else. Why he painted Mount Fuji 100 times, the same subject from every angle? Obsession with perfection?
Mono no eguer.
He traced the edge of an image. Fuji at dawn, the mountain barely visible through morning mist. The pathos of things. The awareness of impermanence. Beauty that exists because it is fleeting.
His voice had softened.
Hokusai understood that we must capture beauty precisely, because it will not last. Amara moved closer, drawn despite herself. You studied art. Tokyo University. Art history and philosophy. He didn't look up from the book. Before my father died. Before duty called me to other things. Other things like... She gestured at his tattoos, visible where his torn shirt gaped. Like becoming what my family needed me to be. He closed the book gently, set it back with care. A weapon. A symbol. Anything but what I wanted. The vulnerability in his admission caught her off guard. She'd expected violence, danger, maybe arrogance. Not this, not regret, not poetry, not a man who handled art books like they were sacred texts. His gaze moved to her walls, to the charcoal sketches she'd pinned there. He stood, crossing to them with focused attention. Her breath caught as he examined each one, a study of hands, a woman's profile in shadow, the Brooklyn Bridge at dusk rendered in blacks and grays. These are yours. Not a question. Just sketches. Nothing serious. He turned, and the look in his eyes was sharp. Why are you not showing your own work? I'm a curator, not an artist. You are both. He gestured at the sketches. This understanding of light and shadow, this confidence in negative space, this is the work of someone with genuine talent. He studied her face with the same intensity he'd given her drawings. So, why do you hide it? I don't hide it. She stopped, uncomfortable under his scrutiny. The art world is complicated. There's a hierarchy. Curators who try to show their own work are seen as desperate, delusional, or they are afraid. His words were gentle but precise, cutting straight to the truth. Afraid that if they claim space, someone will take it from them. The accuracy of it stole her breath. She looked away, busying herself with straightening books that didn't need straightening. You don't know anything about me. I know you saved a stranger's life at risk to your own safety. I know you live surrounded by beauty, but deny your own place within it. I know you are afraid of being seen. He moved closer, and she could feel the heat of him despite the careful distance he maintained. I recognize it because I have spent years being only what others needed me to be, never what I wanted. Before she could respond, her phone shattered the moment. The gallery. She almost didn't answer, but Kaido gestured for her to take it. Amara. Her director's voice was sharp. I know you're sick, but we have an emergency. The Rothstein collection. They're coming today instead of next week. They want to see our Japanese contemporary proposal. Marcus doesn't know the material well enough. Amara closed her eyes. The Rothstein collection could make her career. 6 months of research, of building relationships, of proving she understood the nuances of Japanese contemporary art in ways Marcus never could. I'll be there in an hour. Make it 30 minutes. The call ended. She looked at Kaido, torn between professional obligation and the dangerous stranger bleeding on her couch. Go.
His voice was firm.
This is important to you. You're injured. Your enemies will not find me here. I give you my word. I will stay hidden, safe, until you return. He met her eyes. I owe you a debt, Amara Bennett. In my culture, such debts are sacred. I will not repay your kindness by bringing danger to you while you are gone. She wanted to argue, to insist he couldn't be trusted. But something in his gaze, the same focus he'd given her sketches, her art books, as if they were things worth protecting, made her believe him. There's food in the kitchen. Don't answer the door. Don't. I know how to hide. A slight smile. I've been doing it for years. She grabbed her coat, her bag, her notes on the Rothstein proposal.
At the door, she paused.
Kaido had moved back to her sketches, standing before a charcoal drawing of Brooklyn rooftops at twilight. He touched the edge of the paper with careful fingers. You have a gift for seeing beauty in shadows, he said softly, not looking at her. That is rare. Something in her chest cracked open. In 3 years at the gallery, through countless exhibitions and proposals and late nights proving her worth, no one had ever acknowledged her own artistry. They saw her as useful, competent, a tool to deploy, never as someone who created beauty herself. Thank you, she whispered. When she closed the door behind her, she could still feel the weight of his words, settling into the empty spaces inside her like light finding shadow. The gallery felt like a cage the next day. Amara moved through the halls with her clipboard and her professional smile, but her mind was 3 miles away in Brooklyn, with a dangerous stranger recovering on her couch. She'd left him sleeping, his breathing steady, his color better than the night before. She'd also left a note with emergency numbers and strict instructions not to answer the door. Earth to Amara. Marcus appeared beside her, his smile sharp with curiosity. You've been staring at that Rothko for 10 minutes without moving. Losing focus. Just thinking. She forced herself to look at him instead of through him. The composition, the color relationships.
Right.
Nothing to do with calling in sick yesterday for the first time in 3 years. He leaned closer, voice dropping. Or the fact that you look like you haven't slept. New boyfriend keeping you up. The accuracy of it, however wrong his assumptions, made her spine stiffen. My personal life is none of your concern, Marcus. Just looking out for you. The Rothstein meeting didn't go as well without you. They're considering other galleries. His tone was light, but the dig landed. Would hate to see you lose your edge over some distraction. She bit back the response she wanted to give, that maybe if he spent less time gossiping and more time actually learning the material, he could have handled one meeting. Instead, she smiled coolly. I'll make it right. I always do. The rest of the day dragged like pulling teeth. By the time she made it home, exhaustion sat heavy on her shoulders. She climbed the stairs to her apartment, keys already in hand, and stopped dead. The smell hit her first, green tea, delicate and grassy, mixed with something else. Cleaning products, lemon oil. She pushed open her door to find her apartment transformed. The breakfast dishes she'd left in the sink were clean and drying. Her books, usually scattered across every surface, were stacked in neat piles organized by subject. The hardwood floors gleamed. And in the center of it all, Kaido knelt beside her coffee table, preparing tea with movements so precise they looked like meditation. He'd found her nice teacups, the ones from her grandmother she never used, and set them on a tray with a small plate of what looked like carefully arranged crackers. Steam rose from the teapot in delicate curls. "What are you doing?" she asked, setting down her bag. He looked up, and she was struck again by how different he seemed from the half-dead man she'd dragged inside. His color was back, his eyes clear and focused. He'd somehow cleaned and pressed his torn shirt, wore it with the same confidence as an undamaged suit. "I owe you a debt. In my culture, such debts are sacred. So you cleaned my apartment and made tea? It is the least I can do." He gestured to the cushion across from him.
Please. Seat.
"You have been working all day. You should rest." Amara wanted to argue. This was her apartment. He was injured. She should be taking care of him. But something in his expression stopped her. This mattered to him. So she sat, kicked off her shoes, and accepted the cup he offered with both hands the way she'd seen in documentaries. The tea was perfect, hot but not scalding, grassy and clean with a hint of sweetness. She closed her eyes and let it warm her from the inside. "Better?" he asked. "Better." She opened her eyes to find him watching her with that focused intensity. "How are your wounds?"
Healing well.
"You did excellent work." He poured his own cup, and she noticed how his hands moved, economical, practiced, every gesture intentional. "Tell me about your day."
So she did.
About Marcus and his barbs, about the Rothstein meeting she'd missed, about the pressure to be perfect every single day because any mistake would be magnified, scrutinized, used as proof that she didn't belong. Kaido listened in silence, but she could see his jaw tightening, his fingers gripping his teacup with controlled force. When she finished, his voice was ice. "Such dishonor deserves consequences. This Marcus, he takes credit for your work. He's been doing it for 2 years. My ex did it before him. That's just how it works and then your world is broken." The statement was flat, absolute. "In my culture, stealing another's accomplishments is among the greatest shames. It would not be tolerated." Amara laughed, but it came out bitter. "What would you do? Kill him? Break his hands?" "That's not how it works here, Kaido. I have to smile and document everything and hope that eventually someone notices the pattern. You should not have to shrink yourself to fit a world that does not value you properly." He set down his cup. "You are brilliant. Anyone with eyes can see it. The fact that they choose not to, that is their failing, not yours." Something in her chest cracked at the certainty in his voice. Like it was obvious. Like her worth wasn't up for debate. "Tell me something," he said, refilling her cup. "Do you know kintsugi? The pottery repair technique? Where they use gold to fill the cracks. More than technique. Philosophy." He pulled out his phone, showed her images of bowls with gold-lined cracks running through them like veins of precious metal. "When pottery breaks, we do not hide the damage. We repair it with gold lacquer, making the breaks part of the piece's history. The scars become its most beautiful feature." Amara traced the image on a screen, following the golden veins. "Making it more valuable for having been broken." "Exactly." He looked at her with an intensity that made her breath catch. "You are like that. Your ex who tried to diminish you. This Marcus who steals your work. The world that makes you prove yourself twice as hard. These are the breaks. But you have filled them with gold. You are more beautiful, more valuable, for having survived them." The words settled into her chest, warm and solid. She'd spent years thinking of her struggles as weaknesses, as things to overcome and hide. But Kaido looked at her scars and saw strength. "How did you end up here?" she asked quietly. "Really? What happened?" His expression shuddered, but he didn't look away. "My father died 3 months ago. Heart attack, sudden. The succession should have been automatic. I am the eldest son. I was trained for this role. But there are factions within our organization who see opportunity in transition. The Kobe family, they have always resented our leadership. They decided to act before I could consolidate power. The ambush. I was leaving a meeting in Chinatown. Neutral ground, supposedly protected by old agreements. They did not care about tradition. His hand moved unconsciously to his ribs. They came with knives, wanting to send a message, wanting it to be personal, painful. I fought my way out, but barely. I was trying to reach my people when the storm hit. I should have died in that alley. But you didn't. Because you saved me. He met her eyes.
Why?
You knew I was dangerous. The tattoos, the violence, you had every reason to leave me there. Amara thought about it, that moment of decision, in the freezing rain. My grandmother used to say, we're judged by what we do when nobody's watching and nothing's owed. You were dying. That was all that mattered. You are rare, Amara Bennett. In my world, such compassion would be seen as weakness. But I think it is the strongest thing I have ever witnessed. They talked late into the night, the tea growing cold between them. She told him about her brilliant art history degree from a state school nobody respected, about fighting for every opportunity, about the ex who'd taken her curatorial concept and presented it as his own, costing her a promotion and making her a joke in the department. Kaito's anger on her behalf was fierce and genuine, like he'd personally been wronged. He told her about Tokyo University, about studying art and philosophy when he'd wanted nothing more than to disappear into museums and libraries. About his father calling him home. About duty consuming everything he'd wanted to become. About the weight of a legacy built on violence and fear. I have killed men, he said quietly, his eyes never leaving hers. I will kill again if necessary. That is what I am, what I was made to be. Yet I sit here with you, surrounded by art and beauty and compassion, and for the first time in my life, I feel shame for what I am. His phone buzzed, an encrypted message that made his whole body tense. He read it quickly, jaw tightening. What is it? Hiroshi. My second in command. He is coming to extract me. He looked at her, and something vulnerable crossed his face. I told him I needed one more day. To ensure you are protected before I return to my world. When? Tomorrow night. 3 a.m. He reached across the table, his hand hovering near hers, but not touching. I am sorry. For bringing this danger to your door. For disrupting your life. For. Amara took his hand, felt the calluses, the controlled strength. For showing me what it looks like when someone actually sees me? Don't be. Their fingers intertwined, and the attraction that had been building since that first moment crystallized into something undeniable. Dangerous.
Impossible.
Neither pulled away. Amara woke to absolute stillness, the kind that meant something was wrong. Her apartment was never this quiet, even at 3 in the morning. The radiator should have been hissing, the neighbor's TV murmuring through thin walls, the city humming its endless song outside. But now, nothing. She opened her eyes to find Kaito at her window, his silhouette dark against the streetlight glow. He'd pulled on his torn shirt despite the bandages, and his body was coiled tight, every muscle ready. One hand rested against the window frame. The other held something that caught the light with cold metal precision.
A gun.
Kaito. Her whisper cut through the silence. Stay quiet. His voice was different now, no warmth. No philosophy about art and beauty. This was the voice of a man who'd killed and would kill again. They are here. She slid from the armchair where she dozed, her heart suddenly hammering. Below, 3 black SUVs had pulled up to her building with deliberate silence, their windows tinted dark. Men emerged, Asian, all of them, moving with coordinated precision that spoke of training, a violence held on a tight leash. Your enemies? My people. Before she could process that, footsteps echoed in the hallway. Not running. Walking with absolute confidence toward her door. Kaito moved between her and the entrance, the gun steady in his hand. The lock clicked, not forced, but opened with a key that shouldn't exist. 3 men entered. The first was older, maybe 40, with sharp eyes and a scar bisecting his left eyebrow. The other 2 were younger, harder, their suits cut to conceal weapons. All three stopped dead when they saw Kaido standing in her living room, injured, armed, and positioned protectively in front of a black woman in pajamas. The older man's face cycled through shock, relief, and confusion in rapid succession. He spoke in rapid Japanese, urgent and disbelieving. Kaido responded in English, his eyes never leaving his men. Speak so she can understand. This is her home. Show respect. The older man's jaw tightened, but he switched languages mid-sentence. Boss, we have been searching for 3 days. When you did not make contact, his English was accented but clear. We thought you were dead. Nearly. Kaido gestured at his bandaged torso. Amara Bennett saved my life. Amara, this is Hiroshi Nakamura, my second in command. Hiroshi's gaze swept over her, assessing, cataloging, judging. She forced herself to stand straight under his scrutiny, refused to show the fear, making her hands shake. We must extract you immediately, Hiroshi said, though his eyes kept darting to Amara with barely concealed confusion. The Kobe family has escalated. They are offering money for information about your location. Every hour you remain hidden is an hour they consolidate power. I am aware of the situation. Then come. We have a doctor waiting, safe houses prepared. I am not leaving yet. The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut. Hiroshi stared at his boss like he'd spoken a foreign language. Boss, with respect, you are injured.
Exposed.
We need to. I need to ensure she is protected first. Kaido's voice dropped to something cold and absolute. She is under my protection. Spread the word through all channels, Yakuza, triads, every family from here to Tokyo. Anyone who touches her answers to me personally. Hiroshi's shock was visible even through his professional mask. Boss, you cannot. He switched to Japanese, urgent and disbelieving. Kaido cut him off with a single word that made all three men go rigid. When he continued, his voice was ice. Amara Bennett is under the protection of the Tanaka family. Make it known. Make it absolute. He switched back to English. This is not negotiable, Hiroshi.
Hi.
Hiroshi's response was clipped, professional, but his eyes betrayed his confusion. In all his years serving the Tanaka heir, he'd never seen this. Never seen Kaido claim protection over anyone outside the organization, certainly not a civilian, definitely not a woman who is nothing to their world. The rivals, Kaido continued. What do they know? They know you survived the ambush. They have men watching hospitals, clinics, known associates. Hiroshi hesitated. They know you were wounded. They are searching Brooklyn, but their focus is on Japanese neighborhoods, Korean businesses. They have not yet expanded to. He gestured vaguely at Amara's apartment, at the art books and thrift store furniture, and the life that existed so far outside their world. How much is the bounty? 500,000 for information leading to your location. 1 million for confirmation of death. Amara's breath caught. Kaido didn't even flinch. Double your surveillance teams. I want to know every move the Kobe family makes. But Hiroshi, he waited until his second-in-command met his eyes. No one approaches this building. No one watches this block. You keep your distance and keep her invisible. Understood? For how long? 1 more day. I need to ensure proper security before I return. After Hiroshi and his men left as silently as they'd come, Amara's composure finally cracked. What the hell was that? She rounded on Kaido, anger overriding fear. You gave them access to my apartment? You're announcing my existence to every criminal organization on the East Coast. I am ensuring your survival. He set the gun down carefully, wincing as the movement pulled his stitches. And giving you the one protection that matters in my world, making you too valuable to touch. How much danger am I actually in? He looked at her for a long moment, and she saw him calculating. How much truth? How much protection through ignorance? She raised her chin. Don't you dare lie to me.
Not now.
If they discover you helped me, they will use you to draw me out. His voice was flat, honest. They will hurt you to hurt me. They will make it slow.
Public.
A message to anyone else who might offer me sanctuary. He stepped closer. That is the world I come from, Amara. That is what I am. So what do we do? Her voice was steadier than she felt. You leave? I pretend this never happened? Spend the rest of my life looking over my shoulder. I leave. You forget you ever saw me. Live your life. And if I don't want to forget? The question hung between them, charged with everything unspoken. The late-night conversations about art and philosophy. The way he'd looked at her sketches like they mattered. The careful distance he'd maintained even as the attraction built like gathering storm clouds. Kaido moved closer, slow enough that she could step back if she wanted. She didn't. His hand came up, hesitated, then touched her face with devastating gentleness. The first time he touched her beyond necessity, beyond survival. Then you are either very brave, he said softly, his thumb tracing her cheekbone, or very foolish. She leaned into his touch, felt the calluses on his fingers, the controlled strength that could kill but chose tenderness. Maybe I'm tired of being safe. The words came from somewhere deep, somewhere she'd kept locked for years. Maybe I'm tired of making myself small so others feel comfortable. His eyes darkened. Amara. My whole life, I've played it safe. Took the curatorial job instead of pursuing my own art. Let Marcus take credit because fighting back might cost me everything. Kept my head down in a world that only sees me as useful, never valuable. She held his gaze. You looked at my work and saw me. When was the last time anyone did that? You do not know what you are asking. But his hand hadn't moved from her face. Then tell me. No more half-truths. What happens next? He was quiet for a long moment, his thumb still tracing gentle patterns against her skin. I stay one more day. I make sure you are truly protected, not just words, but systems, people, consequences for anyone who tries. His voice dropped lower. And then I return to my world and end this war before it touches yours. And after? There is no after for men like me. What if I don't accept that? The laugh that escaped him was rough, almost pained. You should. You should run from this, from me, as fast as your sense allows. But even as he said it, his other hand came up to frame her face, and the way he looked at her, like she was art, like she was beauty itself, like she was worth fighting for, made her believe in possibilities she'd never dared imagine. Kaido insisted on accompanying her to the Met, and Amara knew better than to argue. Not after last night. Not after watching Hiroshi's face, when Kaido had claimed her under his protection. He emerged from her bathroom in a suit that must have cost more than her monthly rent. Charcoal gray, perfectly tailored, delivered by one of Hiroshi's men along with a doctor who'd redressed his wounds in professional silence. The suit hid the bandages completely. Only the careful way he moved betrayed any injury. You look like you're going to a board meeting, she said, adjusting her own outfit, her best gallery dress, burgundy wool that she'd found at a consignment shop and had tailored to fit perfectly. We're playing a part. He offered his arm with old-world courtesy. A couple viewing art on a Sunday afternoon. Nothing unusual. Nothing worth noticing. They took a car service to the museum, and Amara tried to ignore how natural it felt, his hand at the small of her back as they climbed the iconic steps, the way he stood close enough to shield her from the winter wind, the careful attention he paid to her comfort despite his own injuries. Inside, the Met was busy with the weekend crowd. Tourists clustered around the Temple of Dunder. Art students sketched in the European galleries. The usual controlled chaos of one of the world's greatest museums. The Japanese prints are this way, Amara said, guiding him toward the Asian art wing. The acquisition I'm reviewing is a series of Yashitoshi works, 100 aspects of the moon. The owner is considering donation versus sale. Kaido's interest sharpened. Yashitoshi, the last master of ukiyo-e. They moved through galleries, and she watched him catalog escape routes, security positions, crowds that could provide cover or complication. You know his work? Of course. His Moon series is extraordinary, violent and beautiful, historical and personal. They entered the gallery housing the prince, and Amara felt herself relax into familiar territory. This is what I love. Finding homes for art that matters, making sure it's seen by people who can appreciate.
She stopped.
3 men had entered the gallery behind them, Asian, mid-30s, moving with that same coordinated precision she'd seen from Hiroshi's team. But their eyes weren't respectful. They were predatory. Kaito. I see them. His voice stayed conversational, but his body had gone rigid. Keep walking. Toward the Egyptian wing. Don't run. Are they? Kobe family. They found us. His hand moved to the small of her back, guiding her forward with gentle pressure. We need to move. Now. They walked quickly, but not frantically, blending with the crowd flowing between galleries. Amara's heart hammered against her ribs. Behind them, she heard rapid footsteps, closer than before. How did they find you? It does not matter. This way. He steered her into the Egyptian galleries, through the towering columns and ancient sarcophagi. The irony wasn't lost on her, running for their lives through rooms dedicated to death and eternity. More men ahead, blocking the main exit. For total, maybe 5. Kaito's jaw tightened. Can you reach the medieval wing from here? Yes, through the next gallery and left. Her curator's knowledge of the museum's labyrinthine layout was suddenly a survival skill. There's a service stairway that. Show me. They moved fast now, Amara leading them through galleries she knew by heart. Past Greek statues and Roman mosaics, through the arms and armor collection where medieval knights stood eternal watch. She could hear the men behind them, not bothering with subtlety anymore. The roof garden, she gasped. There's an access point. Kaito grabbed her hand and ran. They burst through a service door, up a narrow stairwell, into the cold January air of the museum's roof garden. The view of Central Park spread below them, Manhattan's skyline glittering beyond. Beautiful and useless. The door behind them slammed open. 3 men emerged, and Amara saw the bulges under their jackets that meant weapons, violence, death. Get behind me. Kaito's voice was ice. Kaito, they have. Behind me. Now. She moved, and then he was between her and them, and the transformation was complete. This wasn't the man who discussed philosophy over tea or touched her sketches with reverence. This was the heir to a criminal empire, the weapon his family had forged. The first man lunged. Kaito moved with brutal efficiency, redirected the attack, used the man's momentum against him, sent him crashing into the garden's metal railing with a sickening crack. The second came in low. Kaito's elbow caught him in the throat, followed by a knee that dropped him gasping. The third pulled a knife. Amara's scream caught at her throat as the blade flashed toward Kaito's ribs, toward his healing wounds. But he was already moving, turning inside the attack, his hand closing around the man's wrist with crushing force. She heard bones snap. The knife clattered to the ground. Kaito's other hand struck once, twice, precise and devastating, and the man went down. Museum alarms shrieked. Security was coming. The wounded men were already struggling to their feet, retreating toward the stairwell. Kaito grabbed Amara's hand. Run. They fled down a different stairway, through service corridors Amara barely knew existed, out a loading dock entrance into the cold afternoon. A car was waiting, one of Hiroshi's, engine running. They dove inside, and it pulled away before the door was fully closed. 20 minutes later, they were in a hotel room that probably cost more per night than her monthly rent. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Central Park. Marble bathroom. Art on the walls that was actually good. Kaito was on the phone immediately, speaking rapid Japanese that she couldn't follow but understood meant consequences, meant retaliation, meant war. Amara sat on the edge of the enormous bed, shaking. The adrenaline that had carried her through the chase was crashing now, leaving her hollow and terrified and aware of how close they'd come to. Amara. Kaito was there, kneeling in front of her, his hands gentle on her face. Breathe. You're safe. I have you. They were going to you could have, the words wouldn't come. Tears she'd been holding back spilled over. He pulled her against his chest, and she felt the steady beat of his heart, proof that they were both alive, both whole. I will end this, he murmured into her hair. I promise you. This war, these threats, I will end it all. She pulled back to look at him and saw it, fresh blood spreading across his white shirt. You're bleeding. It is nothing. Don't lie to me. She was already unbuttoning his shirt with shaking hands. You tore your stitches. Kaido, you could have. Why didn't you tell me? Because you needed me focused. Because stopping to worry about wounds would have gotten us killed. He caught her hands as she peeled back the bandages. Amara. Let me see. The wounds had reopened, not completely, but enough. She grabbed towels from the bathroom, tried to remember her training, her steadiness. But her hands were shaking too hard. Kaido covered them with his own. Look at me.
She did.
His eyes were dark, intense, but no longer cold. No longer the weapon. Just a man who'd killed to protect her and was bleeding for it. I am sorry, he said softly, for bringing this to your life. For putting you in danger. For being. She kissed him, cut off his apology with her mouth on his, desperate and terrified and needing to feel him alive, real, here. For a heartbeat he froze, and then he was kissing her back with the same desperation, the same need, his hands framing her face like she was precious, like she was art. If I touch you now, he breathed against her lips, his forehead pressed to hers, I will not want to let you go. Amara pulled back just enough to meet his eyes. She thought about her careful life, her safe choices, the way she'd made herself small for years. She thought about his hands on her sketches, his voice talking about beauty in shadows, the way he'd stood between her and death without hesitation. Then don't let go, she whispered. His kiss was tender this time, achingly gentle despite the violence still humming through both their bodies. She tasted fear and relief and promise, felt his careful restraint even as his hands trembled against her skin. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he touched his forehead to hers again. You are either very brave or very foolish, Amara Bennett. You keep saying that. She smiled through tears. Maybe I'm both. Morning light filled the hotel room with gold, turning everything soft and unreal. Amara woke wrapped in Egyptian cotton sheets that cost more than her couch, Kaido's arm around her waist, his breath steady against her neck. For a moment, she let herself pretend this was normal, waking beside a man who'd killed for her yesterday, who'd kissed her like she was oxygen, who'd been so careful with her body despite the violence, still humming through his own. His phone shattered the illusion. He extracted himself with careful precision, mindful of his reopened wounds, and answered in Japanese. She watched his face harden with each word, the tender man from last night disappearing behind the Yakuza air. When he ended the call, he was quiet for a long moment. The Kobe family is consolidating power faster than we anticipated. His voice was flat, controlled. I need to return to my organization. Today. Amara sat up, pulling the sheet around herself. How bad is it? They are making alliances. Bringing in outside families. If I do not act now, he stopped, jaw tight.
People will die.
People who are loyal to me, who trust me to protect them. Then go. The words hurt to say, but she meant them. Do what you need to do. Before he could respond, her phone rang. The gallery. She almost didn't answer, but something made her reach for it. Amara. Her director's voice was clipped, professional. I need you to come in. We've been given an unexpected opportunity. The Nakamura Foundation is considering us for a major Japanese contemporary art exhibition. But they want to see a proposal by Friday. A full curatorial vision. Amara's breath caught. The Nakamura Foundation was legendary, wealthy, selective, career-making. Japanese contemporary? But that's not my area. Marcus has been. They specifically asked for you. Apparently, someone recommended your work. A pause. This could be significant, Amara. For you and for the gallery. Can you do it? She looked at Kaido, who was watching her with focused intensity.
Yes.
I can do it. When she hung up, he was already moving toward his laptop. The Nakamura Foundation. Hiroshi arranged it.
What?
Why would? Because I told him to. He pulled up files, images, databases she'd never seen. You need this opportunity. And he stopped, something vulnerable crossing his face. I cannot give you safety. I cannot promise you a future without complications. But I can give you this. Let me help you. They returned to her apartment that afternoon, and for 2 days the world narrowed to art and possibility. Kaido spread catalogs across her floor. Japanese contemporary artists she'd heard of, and dozens she hadn't. Takashi Murakami's super-flat aesthetic. Yayoi Kusuma's infinity rooms. Hiroshi Sugimoto's seascapes. Younger artists pushing boundaries, blending traditional techniques with radical contemporary vision. Here. He pulled up an image on his laptop, a sculpture by Kohei Nawa, a pixelated deer that seemed to shimmer between dimensions. This is what the West misses about Japanese contemporary art. It is not rejection of tradition, but evolution of it. The same concepts, negative space, wabi-sabi, beauty in imperfection, but expressed in new forms. Amara leaned over his shoulder, her mind racing. And if we pair it with someone like Mariko Mori, her photographs have that same quality, futuristic but spiritual. She's playing with the same tension between tradition and technology. Exactly. His hand found hers. You see it. The through line. They worked through the night, surrounded by coffee cups and notebooks, and the kind of creative fever Amara hadn't felt since graduate school. He would pull an artist, explain the cultural context she was missing, the connection to Shinto aesthetics, the influence of manga, the way post-war trauma shaped contemporary Japanese vision. She would see how it fit into broader contemporary movements, find the hooks that would make American audiences understand, care, invest. What about Chiharu Shiota? She pulled up images of the artist's installation work, rooms filled with red thread, creating webs that held memories, objects, stories. Her work deals with memory and loss. Very mono-no-aware. Kaido stared at the image for a long moment.
Yes.
This is perfect. She understands that beauty and pain are not opposites but partners. He looked at her. Like kintsugi. The cracks filled with gold. You keep coming back to that concept. Because it is how I see you. He set down his laptop, pulled her close. Broken by a world that tried to make you small. But the breaks are where your strength shows. Where the gold is. She kissed him, let herself get lost in it for a moment before reality pulled her back. Tell me what happens next. With your family. The war. He was quiet, his hand tracing patterns on her back. I have been thinking about something you said. About building instead of destroying. He pulled back to meet her eyes. My father built an empire on violence and fear. It has made us powerful, but not respected. Not legitimate. And you want to change that. I want to transform it. Technology. International trade. Real estate. Art acquisition and preservation. His voice strengthened with conviction. The infrastructure is already there, the networks, the resources, the loyalty. Why not redirect it towards something that creates value instead of extracting it? That's ambitious. It is necessary. For my people. For the legacy I want to leave. He paused, something vulnerable in his eyes. For us. The words slipped out before she could stop it. He cupped her face, thumbs tracing her cheekbones. I do not deserve you, Amara Bennett. I have done terrible things. My hands are not clean. But I find myself wanting to become a man who could deserve you. A man who builds beautiful things instead of destroying them. You already see beauty. You already understand it. She covered his hands with hers. The empire doesn't define you, Kaido. Your choices do. Then I choose to rebuild it. Make it worthy of. His phone rang. The ring-tone that meant Hiroshi meant urgent. Kaido answered, his whole body tensing with each word. When he hung up, his face was stone.
They know about you.
The Kobe family. Someone saw us at the museum, made the connection. His voice was ice. They're offering $2 million for your location. Fear spiked through her. $2 million? For me? For leverage against me. He was already moving, packing his things with controlled efficiency despite his injuries. I need to end this now.
Today.
Before they get close enough to... What are you going to do? What I should have done 3 days ago. Stop hiding. Stop waiting. He turned to her, and the look in his eyes was fierce. I am going to remind everyone why the Tanaka family leads, and then I am going to rebuild everything from the ground up. How long will that take? Months. Maybe longer. He pulled her against him, held her like he could memorize her through touch alone. But I will do it. I will build an empire worthy of you. And when I can offer you something more than danger and blood, I will return and ask you properly. Ask me what? He kissed her instead of answering, desperate and tender and full of promise. When he finally pulled back, his forehead rested against hers. To take a chance on a man who is trying to be better than what he was, who sees you and wants to build beautiful things. His voice dropped to a whisper. Who loves you enough to leave so he can return worthy of staying? Amara's breath caught. Kaito. Do not say it back. Not yet. Not until I have earned it. He stepped away, and the distance felt like violence. Finish your proposal. Make it brilliant. Show them what I already know, that you are exceptional. And then wait for me, if you can, if you want to. He was at the door now, and she'd never seen anyone look so torn between duty and desire. I will come back, Amara. I swear it. The door closed behind him, and she stood alone in her apartment, surrounded by art catalogs and coffee cups and the ghost of his presence. Outside, engine started. SUVs pulled away. He was gone, back to his world of violence and power. But on her laptop, their curatorial vision glowed, a collaboration between two worlds, two people, two ways of seeing beauty. She sat down and kept working because he was right. She needed to be exceptional. And when he came back, if he came back, she needed to be ready. 3 weeks later, Amara stood in the gallery she'd transformed and barely recognized her own work. The space glowed with carefully calibrated lighting that made Chiharu Shioda's red thread installations seem to pulse with life. Kohei Nawa's pixelated deer caught light from every angle, shimmering between dimensions. Yayoi Kusuma's infinity room created portals to other worlds. She'd done it, created a dialogue between traditional Japanese aesthetics and radical contemporary vision that made even the jaded art world elite pause and really look. Extraordinary work, Ms. Bennett. A collector whose name appeared on museum donor walls touched her arm. I haven't seen Japanese contemporary art curated with this kind of cultural depth in years. You understand the philosophy beneath the form. Amara smiled, accepted the praise, tried to ignore the hollow ache in her chest. Kaito should have been here to see this. They'd built this vision together over 2 days of coffee and catalogs and conversations that had felt like falling. But he'd been gone for 3 weeks, radio silence except for 2 brief texts from Hiroshi. He's alive. He is working. Be patient. Amara, the board is very pleased. Her director appeared, champagne in hand, smile sharp as wire. We're discussing expanding your role. Senior curator, perhaps. Pending tonight's final impressions, of course. Marcus materialized beside them, his smile poisonous. Of course, the concept was something we developed collaboratively. I'd been researching Japanese contemporary aesthetics for months before.
No.
The word came out harder than Amara intended. The gallery went quiet around them. You had nothing to do with this exhibition, Marcus. The research, the vision, the curatorial choices, all mine. Stop taking credit for work you didn't do. Marcus's face flushed. Amara, I don't think. I know you don't think. That's the problem. She held his gaze until he looked away. 3 weeks ago, she would have let it slide, would have made herself small to keep the peace. But she'd faced down Yakuza assassins in the Met. She'd stitched a dying man's wounds and chosen danger over safety. She was done shrinking. Her director's expression was unreadable.
Well,
That's clarified then. She turned to Marcus. Perhaps you should check on the catering. As he slunk away, Amara felt a hand on her shoulder. The collector was smiling. About time someone said it. That man's been riding coattails for years. She raised her glass. To women who claim their space. Amara was drinking to that when she saw them. Two men in suits near the entrance, too still, too watchful. Their eyes weren't on the art. They were scanning the crowd with tactical precision. Wrong energy. Wrong purpose. Her blood turned cold. Then Kaido walked through the door, and the room seemed to tilt. He wore an impeccable charcoal suit, his hair perfect, moving with that predatory grace she remembered. But his eyes were scanning too, cataloging threats, calculating odds. He saw her across the gallery, and something in his expression cracked. Relief, longing, regret. He crossed to her through the crowd, and people moved without realizing they were moving, making space for something they sensed but couldn't name. "Forgive me," he said quietly when he reached her. "I brought this to your door." "What?" "They're here. The Kobe family. They know this is your night, that the art world elite are watching." His hand found hers, squeezed once. Maximum impact. Maximum humiliation. "They want to take you from your moment of triumph." "How many?" "At least 6 inside. More outside." He pulled her close, and to the crowd it must have looked like an embrace. "Hiroshi has men positioned, but this will get violent. When I give the signal, you get your guests to the back exits. Understand?" She nodded against his chest, breathing him in, cedar and danger, and the clean smell of expensive fabric. "I missed you. I missed you like breathing." He pulled back, touched her face once. "Now smile. Look natural. They are watching." Amara smiled, laughed like he'd said something charming. Over his shoulder, she saw more men entering. Asian, hard-faced, moving with purpose. The art world guests were oblivious, sipping champagne, discussing aesthetics, completely unaware of the violence about to erupt. The first man moved fast, cutting toward Amara through the crowd. Kaido was faster, stepping between them, his hand shooting out in a strike, so quick most people missed it. The man went down gasping. Screams erupted. Champagne glasses shattered. Back exits.
now.
Amara shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos. She grabbed her director's arm, started pushing guests toward the rear of the gallery. "Everyone move. This way." Hiroshi and his team materialized from the crowd, black suits and brutal efficiency. The gallery became a battlefield, controlled violence between the art, careful not to damage the installations even as men fought and bled. Amara saw Kaido engage 3 men at once, his movements economical and devastating, leading them away from the guests toward the empty installation room. She got the last civilians out, then turned back. She couldn't just leave him. In the installation room, Kaido was bleeding. A knife had caught his side, the same side as before, tearing through suit and flesh. But he was still fighting, still moving with that terrible grace. One of his attackers lunged, and Kaido's response was final, a strike to the throat, precise and lethal. The man dropped. Amara's breath caught. She'd known intellectually what he was, but seeing death delivered with such controlled precision, made it real in a way it hadn't been before. Kaido's eyes found hers across the room. For a moment, everything stopped. Blood on his hands. A body at his feet. The man she loved and the monster he could be, existing in the same space. Police sirens wailed outside. Hiroshi grabbed Kaido's arm. "Boss, we have to move."
Now.
"Go," Amara said, though the word felt like tearing. "I'll handle the police." Kaido crossed to her in 3 strides, pulled her against him despite his wounds, despite everything. "I will come back," he said fiercely. "I swear it. I will end this war, and I will come back for you. I know. She kissed him, tasting blood and salt and promise. I'll be here. Hiroshi's team evacuated Kaido through a service entrance as police flooded the front. Amara stood alone in her destroyed gallery, surrounded by art that had survived and the chaos that hadn't, and waited for the questions she knew were coming. The police interview was brutal. The gallery director was furious. The board demanded answers. But then something unexpected happened. The collectors, the donors, the art world elite who'd witnessed everything began speaking up. She was clearly a victim. The men had attacked her opening. She'd protected the guests, shown remarkable courage under pressure. Ms. Bennett handled herself with extraordinary professionalism, one board member declared, under circumstances that would have destroyed most people. By midnight, the narrative had shifted. Amara Bennett, brilliant young curator, victim of a targeted attack, hero who'd saved lives. Her director was already planning the press release. But Amara barely heard it. She stood in the empty gallery, looking at the art she and Kaido had chosen together, and touched her lips where he'd kissed her. Blood and promise. Violence and beauty. The man who'd killed to protect her and sworn to come back worthy of her love. I will come back, he'd mouthed as they'd carried him away, wounded again, bleeding for her again. She believed him. She had to. 3 months passed like a season of waiting, though Amara told herself she wasn't waiting. She was becoming. The exhibition had been a critical triumph. Write-ups in Art Forum, features in the Times, offers from other institutions wanting her vision, her voice. The gallery promoted her to associate curator with an actual salary that meant she could breathe, could save, could finally stop choosing between heat and groceries. But the scandal followed her like a shadow. Whispers in the break room that went silent when she entered. Collectors who asked careful questions about that unfortunate incident. Marcus spreading poison whenever he thought she couldn't hear. Yakuza boyfriend, dangerous connections. What was she really involved in? Amara held her head high and did her work. Let them whisper. She'd earned her position through brilliance, not connections. The art spoke for itself. Hiroshi visited on the first of every month, always at her apartment, always with gifts she refused. Omakase from the best sushi restaurant in the city. First edition art books worth thousands. A jade bracelet that looked like it belonged in a museum. I can't accept these, she said for the 3rd time, pushing back a box containing what appeared to be an antique kimono. It's too much. These are not from Kaido-san, Hiroshi said patiently. These are from me. You saved our family's future. You gave our boss something to fight for beyond duty. His English had improved over the months. Such debts must be honored. How is he? The question slipped out before she could stop it. Hiroshi's expression softened almost imperceptibly.
Alive.
Working. He does not permit me to say more. A pause.
But he asks about you.
Every day. After he left, Amara would search the news. Major reorganization in Tokyo underworld. Yakuza families consolidating under new leadership. Tanaka family expands into technology sector, international trade. The articles were vague, careful, but she could read between the lines. Kaido had survived. More than survived. He was transforming everything, just like he'd promised. She threw herself into her next project, a major exhibition on kintsugi and repair aesthetics. The philosophy of finding beauty in brokenness, of making cracks visible instead of hiding them. She spent weeks researching, traveling to private collections, convincing owners to loan pieces. Her director raised an eyebrow at the proposal. Broken pottery? That's the concept. Pottery repaired with gold, Amara corrected. The Japanese philosophy that damage and repair are part of an object's history, not something to disguise. That the cracks make it more beautiful, not less. And you think wealthy collectors want to contemplate brokenness? I think everyone wants to believe their scars can be transformed into something precious. She held her director's gaze. Trust me on this. The director did. The exhibition was scheduled for month 4. But something else happened during those 3 months, something Amara hadn't planned. She started drawing again. Not the safe sketches she'd hidden in her apartment, but real work. Charcoal drawings inspired by her time with Kaido, hands holding broken pottery, shadows that looked like dragons, a man's profile rendered in negative space. She drew violence and tenderness, fear and desire, the moments when everything had hung in balance. A small gallery in Brooklyn, the kind that showed emerging artists, that took risks, offered her a slot. For walls, 3 weeks. Her own show. You should do it, her friend Maya said over coffee. They'd known each other since graduate school, and Maya was one of the few people who knew the whole story. Stop hiding your work. I'm not hiding. I'm being practical. Curators who show their own art are seen as talented, multifaceted, brave. Maya leaned forward. Amara, you faced down literal mobsters. You saved a man's life and fell in love with someone impossible. You rebuilt your career after it nearly imploded. And you're afraid of hanging your own drawings. When she put it that way, it did sound ridiculous. Amara said yes to the gallery. She worked on the drawings at night, refining them, adding pieces, creating a narrative arc. Her family called weekly, worried. Her mother had seen the news, knew something had happened, though Amara had told her a sanitized version. Baby girl, you sure you're okay? Her mother's voice carried generations of knowing when her daughter was lying. You sound different. I am different, Mama. I'm better. And she meant it. I'm finally doing what I should have been doing all along. And this man, the one you won't talk about. Amara looked at the drawing in front of her, Kaido's hands, rendered in shadow and light, capable of violence and tenderness in equal measure. He's trying to become someone better too. You waiting for him?
No.
The truth of it settled in her chest. I'm becoming. If he comes back, if he keeps his promises, then we'll see. But I'm not putting my life on hold. I'm done making myself small for anyone. Her mother was quiet for a moment. Your grandmother would be proud. Month 3, day 89, the Kintsugi exhibition opened to critical acclaim. Amara stood in the gallery surrounded by broken things made beautiful and felt something shift in her chest. She'd done this. Not because Kaido had helped with research, not because anyone had given her permission, but because she'd claimed the space and demanded to be heard. Month 3, day 90, Hiroshi arrived at her apartment with a different energy. No gifts this time. Just a question. Kaido-sen asks if you would receive him. The formality of the request struck her. Not as he was, but as he is becoming. Amara's heart stuttered. When? Tomorrow. If you consent. Hiroshi's expression was carefully neutral. He has ended the war. Restructured the organization. He is... A pause, choosing words carefully. He is ready to offer you what he promised. If you still want it. She thought about the last 3 months. The promotions and exhibitions and late nights drawing. The way she'd built a life that was full even without him. That was hers in a way nothing had been before. She'd learned to stand in her own light instead of hiding in shadows. Yes, she said. Tell him yes. That night, she hung the last pieces for her own exhibition. The Brooklyn Gallery was small, intimate, nothing like the Manhattan spaces she curated. But it was hers. Her name on the wall. Her vision on display. She stood in front of her largest piece, a charcoal drawing of broken pottery being repaired with gold, the hands doing the work neither fully visible nor fully hidden. The piece was titled Kintsugi, Self-Portrait. Maya found her there, staring at her own work. You okay? I'm terrified, Amara admitted. What if people hate it? What if they think it's derivative or too personal, or... What if they love it? What if they see what I see? That you're brilliant. Maya squeezed her shoulder. You've spent 3 years making other people's visions come to life. It's time they saw yours. Amara looked around the gallery, at her drawings, her truth, her heart made visible. She'd done this. With or without Kaido, with or without anyone's approval, she'd finally claimed her space. Tomorrow he would come. Tomorrow she would see if the man who'd promised to become worthy of her had kept his word. But tonight, Standing in front of her own art for the first time, she realized something fundamental had changed. She wasn't waiting anymore.
She'd arrived.
Evening light filtered through the gallery windows, turning the kintsugi bowls into vessels of captured gold. Amara moved through the private viewing with practiced grace, discussing the philosophy of repair with collectors who were beginning to understand that brokenness could be beautiful. The exhibition had exceeded every expectation: sold pieces, international interest, museums requesting loans. She was explaining the historical context of a 17th century tea bowl when she felt it, that shift in the air that meant he was near. Kaito walked through the front door like he belonged there, not sneaking through service entrances or hiding in shadows. He wore an impeccable navy suit, his hair perfectly styled, moving with that same controlled power. But something had changed. The predatory edge had softened into something more settled, more at peace. He carried himself like a man who'd fought his wars and chosen a different path. Their eyes met across the gallery, and the 3 months collapsed into nothing. Amara excused herself from the collector and crossed to him, her heart hammering against her ribs. Up close, she could see the changes: a new scar along his jaw, shadows under his eyes that spoke of sleepless nights, but also something lighter in his expression. Like he'd set down a weight he'd carried for years. "Hi," she said, suddenly uncertain.
Eat.
He smiled, and it reached his eyes in a way she'd never seen before. "Your exhibition is extraordinary. The Brooklyn show, too. I saw the drawings. You've been keeping track. Every day." He gestured to the kintsugi bowls surrounding them. "May I?" She nodded, and they walked together to the centerpiece of the exhibition, a large Edo period bowl, its cracks filled with gold lacquer that caught the light like veins of precious metal. The damage was visible, celebrated, transformed into the bowl's defining beauty. Kaito stood before it for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was quiet, reverent. "I have spent 3 months repairing what was broken, not hiding the cracks, but making them part of something stronger. The war ended. The Kobe family is no longer a threat." He turned to face her. "But more than that, I have restructured everything. Technology companies, international trade partnerships, real estate development. The Tanaka organization is legitimate now, still powerful, but building instead of destroying." Amara's breath caught. "You did it. What you promised. I did it for you. For the possibility of us." He took her hand, and his palm was warm, steady. "But I want to build something more. A foundation for Japanese-American cultural exchange. Exhibitions, scholarships, artist residencies. Bridging the gap between traditions and contemporary vision." His eyes held hers. "And I want you to direct it, Kaito. Full creative control. Real budget. The chance to do what you do best, finding beauty and making sure the world sees it." He squeezed her hand. "I can provide the resources. You provide the vision." She pulled her hand away, crossing her arms. "Is this a job offer or a marriage proposal?" "It is both." Before she could respond, he dropped to one knee right there in the gallery, in front of the kintsugi bowl with its golden cracks, in front of the collectors who'd gone silent and still. He pulled a small box from his pocket, opened it to reveal a ring. Platinum band, black diamond catching light like a piece of night sky made solid. "Amara Bennett, I am offering you partnership in every sense. My work, my life, my future." His voice was steady, sure. "I cannot promise safety. I cannot erase my past. But I can promise that every day I will work to be worthy of your faith in me. I can promise to build beautiful things instead of destroying them. I can promise to see you, always, for the extraordinary woman you are." He paused. "Will you marry me?" The gallery held its breath. Amara looked down at him. This man who'd been a weapon and chose to become something else, who'd killed to protect her and bled for her and spent 3 months rebuilding an empire so he could offer her something worthy. "Yes," she said, "but I have conditions." "Name them." "I keep my career at the gallery. My independence. My voice. I'm not giving up what I've built to become someone's kept woman. He smiled, fierce and genuine. I would have it no other way. You are not a woman to be kept, Amara. You are a woman to be partnered. He slid the ring onto her finger. Perfect fit, like he'd measured in secret. Like you, he said softly. Unconventional.
Rare.
Perfect. She pulled him to his feet and kissed him in front of everyone, and the gallery erupted in applause. 6 months later, they married in a ceremony that blended everything they were. Shinto rituals and Baptist hymns. Cherry blossoms and magnolias. Her mother in the front row crying happy tears. Hiroshi standing as Kaido's best man. The art world and the reformed Tanaka organization witnessing together. Amara wore a dress that was both wedding gown and work of art, and when Kaido saw her, his composure finally cracked. You are the most beautiful thing I have ever seen, he whispered as they joined hands. You're not bad yourself, she whispered back, and he laughed. Real, unguarded, free. 1 year later, the foundation opened in a converted warehouse in Brooklyn that Kaido had purchased, and Amara had transformed. Soaring ceilings, perfect light, space for exhibitions and workshops, and the kind of cultural dialogue she'd always dreamed of facilitating. The opening gala brought together everyone. Her family, his people, collectors and artists and scholars, Japanese masters and American innovators. Amara stood beside Kaido greeting guests, his hand at the small of her back, her ring catching light with every gesture. They moved as a unit now, finishing each other's sentences, reading each other's cues with practiced ease. This is remarkable, a museum director said, taking in the space. You've created something genuinely new here, a real bridge between cultures. We built it together, Amara said, looking at Kaido. That's the whole point. Beauty created through partnership. Later, in their home, a brownstone they'd renovated together, filled with art they'd collected piece by piece. Amara worked on drawings for her next exhibition while Kaido reviewed foundation finances at the opposite end of their shared studio. They worked in comfortable silence, the kind that came from being fully known and fully accepted. He looked up from his laptop and just watched her, charcoal moving across paper, her face focused and fierce, completely in her element. You taught me something, he said quietly. She glanced over. What's that? That beauty is more powerful than fear. That creation matters more than destruction. He closed the laptop, crossed to her. That becoming is more important than what we were. Amara set down her charcoal and pulled him close. You taught me something too. That I deserve to take up space. That my voice matters. That being loved doesn't mean being diminished. You were always those things. I just helped you see it. We helped each other see it. Before he could respond, small feet pounded up the stairs. Their daughter, Yuki, 5 years old, adopted from Japan 6 months ago, burst into the studio with a drawing clutched in her hands.
Mama. Papa.
Look what I made. She thrust the paper at them. A crayon drawing of their family, surrounded by flowers and hearts, and what might have been a dragon. Kaido scooped her up, and Amara's heart cracked open at the sight. This man who'd once believed he was only a weapon, now holding their daughter with such careful tenderness. It's beautiful, little one, he said, pressing a kiss to her hair. Just like your mother. Yuki giggled and squirmed free, already running off to her next project. Kaido's arms circled Amara's waist, pulling her back against his chest. Through the window, Brooklyn spread below them. Their neighborhood, their city, their life built from broken pieces and filled with gold. We did it, she whispered. Built something beautiful. We are still building, he corrected, his lips against her temple. Every day, something more. And they were. The foundation thriving, her career soaring, his legitimate empire growing, their family expanding into spaces neither had imagined possible. The life neither thought they deserved, created through choosing each other, through seeing beauty in cracks, through understanding that the best things are made not despite damage, but because of it. Kintsugi, the art of repair made visible, made precious, made whole. Enjoyed the story?
Subscribe.
We've got dozens more about impossible choices, moral complexity, and the messy reality of being human. Don't miss the next one. Click below, and I'll see you soon.